Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Evanston. I'm Robb Geiger, your worship associate. Whether this is your spiritual home or you are newly discovering this community, we're grateful you are here with us. We are an inclusive and welcoming community seeking truth in love and striving to nurture the human spirit for a world made whole. We are guided by our principles and values, which remind us in every moment and through every challenge that each of us is worthy of love and that we are all connected through the vast and beautiful web of existence. We come together to remember our kinship with one another and to hold one another in heart and mind with tenderness and careful attention. If you are joining us online, there are many links of connection in the description below the YouTube live stream, including the order of service credits, ways to support our mission, and how to join our email newsletter list. If you're in the sanctuary, we encourage you to use the QR code for the digital order of service or take one of the large print orders of service. Both are located on the table in the lobby. There are listening assistance devices there as well, and hymnals are available for anyone to use. A few announcements. Tony Ray will be our Interfaith Action of Evanston Vision Keeper Award recipient. The dinner is on September 18th, and we hope you will join us. Sheila Holder will be at one of the program tables after the service to take reservations and answer questions. Tai Chi at UCE is starting a new beginners class Saturday, September 17th. Please scroll down through the newsletter to find the registration button. Second Unitarian Church of Chicago had its signs supporting abortion access for all vandalized this last week. Midwest Access Coalition and others will be joining to you today from 12 to 1 in a rally of solidarity with all those struggling for reproductive justice. We are invited to join them. The rally is outside along the front of Second Unitarian. Parking is tight there, so if you plan to go, carpool or try to take the train. Next Sunday is our in-gathering service and water communion. After the service, we will do an evacuation drill, all of us together. It is meant to help all of us know how to quickly exit the building in the event of an emergency. We will not be simulating any reasons we might be evacuating, except maybe a fire. Then we'll take a photo at the Black Lives Matter sign and enjoy a picnic on the lawn. Bring a dish to share, please. And now let us settle into our shared time of reflection, celebration, and inspiration. As we begin our worship service, those joining us online are invited to gather your chalice as we join in beloved community. Welcome to worship.
My country, 'tis of the land of inequity, of the I sing. Land where my mothers cried, fought, bled, and sacrificed for rights which we are now denied. Let freedom ring. Land of dystopia, religious myopia, I mourn for thee. Behind dusty oaken doors, 6-robed dinosaurs conspired to wage a holy war over our bodies. But the true bell of liberty, she does not quiet easily, long may she ring. Her echoes will amplify, marching till morning light, all genders side by side, till freedom rings.
The Unitarian Church of Evanston resides on the traditional homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. In 1829, this land was recorded as being transferred from the local Potawatomi community, who had no choice but to sell their land to the U.S. government before being forcefully removed west of the Mississippi River. This land was then sold to white settlers. The Chicago area is now home to one of the largest and most diverse urban Native communities in the U.S. The acknowledgement of this land's history is one small effort toward building long-term solidarity with contemporary Indigenous communities. We name these realities with honor for all the ancestors and with respect for our descendants, with gratitude for the animals and plants sustained by this land, and with deep appreciation for the land we use as sacred space. As we light our chalice, symbol of our living tradition, please join in saying the words on the screen by Erica Hewitt. With the kindling of this flame, we honor the mysteries and riddles that prompt us to ask questions. We give thanks for this community in which we can seek their answers, and we open our hearts and minds to our great and many freedoms. Please rise in body or spirit and join in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Before we sing our opening hymn, let's turn to one another briefly to say good morning, and try to greet someone sitting near you but who you don't know yet. For those of you participating through the live stream, check in on the chat if you haven't already. Okay, people, please remain uplifted and join in singing hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, verses 1 and 2.
Good morning. The Creator's Workshop, adapted from Story, Song, and Spirit by Erica Hewitt. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a creator who had a hobby of making planets. The creator took pride in making each one different. One day, she looked at a gap in the solar system and pondered it. She sat and looked into the vast reaches of swirling matter and thought long and hard about creating another new planet. She had a very large workshop in which she had rows and rows of shelves with little jars and envelopes of things. To begin, she took a large glass jar down from the shelf and started adding ingredients to her planet. A dash of this, a pinch of that. She poured in lots of liquid from a jar marked oceans and seas. From the jar marked clear lakes, she slowly poured in more liquid, topping it off with a drop from a jar labeled waterfalls. The creator smiled and then added mountains, forests, and jungles to her new planet. She added a dash of furry and feathered animals. Then she decided to shake in a sample from among her boxes labeled human beings. She combined people of all sizes and shapes and ages with many colors of skin and hair, many different kinds of noses, and many different interests and skills. All of it was so beautiful because each one was different. Over all the people, she sprinkled some powder called change, so that people would change interests and skills. She sprinkled responsibility so that people would care for the earth and each other. She looked in the section of her closet called emotions and senses, and she wondered whether she could add a little or a lot. She started with love, and then she closed her eyes and reached in and took a handful of sadness, courage, loneliness, happiness, memory, and hope. She shook out smell, touch, taste, sight, and hearing. There was so much beauty for her human beings to see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. Finally, the creator was almost done. Almost. There was one more ingredient the creator wanted to add. She moved the jars around looking for one special jar she remembered that she had but had never used before. She carefully lifted down a little jar labeled choice. This time she had to read the label because she didn't remember exactly what was in the jar. It said on the bottle, "This compound contains choice, to choose one thing instead of another. Use cautiously, because the choices made will have consequences." This will make it especially interesting, thought the creator. I wonder what choice will do for these new beings. She held the open jar in her hand, slowly turning it as she looked into it. A soft chuckle rumbled out of her mouth and into the jar. A tear trickled down her cheek and into the jar also. She leaned over and blew in her warm breath and then poured the freedom to choose into the mix. And then she screwed on the cover and put the jar away. Her new planet was ready to be sent into the star-speckled darkness. It landed just where she intended, about 93 million miles from her favorite sun. The creator watched her planet settle into its new home and waited to see what would happen. The end. Or was it the end or just the beginning? Our freedom to choose one thing or another with consequences can feel ripe with responsibility, with possibility. Think of a time when you felt that freedom as a blessing and felt excited about all the wonderful outcomes that could blossom from that freedom. Sometimes our freedom to make a choice feels frightening, as if we didn't trust ourselves or were stuck in a situation with no good outcome. Think of a time when choice felt frightening to you, as if the consequences weren't welcome and you wanted someone else to make a decision for you. Remember in your time of making a frightening choice, the people who helped you feel strong and safe, even if it was yourself. Remember those who helped you make that decision, who supported you. Hold in gratitude all the people who loved you, even if your freedom led you to choose something that had painful consequences. Look back with your older, wiser eyes and understand how choosing has been a teacher. Whether your decision had happy consequences or whether freedom to choose has gotten you in trouble, open your heart to understand that freedom to choose has helped you grow and learn. And consider where in life today you see people you love struggling with decisions, with their freedom to choose. How might you help them to show them that no one needs to confront their choices alone? Remember what a gift we are to each other. Know that this community will help you celebrate your many choices. When making choices seems frightening, this community will journey with you toward the unknown.
Each Sunday, we hold space for the joys and sorrows of this gathered community, honoring the struggles and the triumphs, the brokenness and the wholeness that is part of our shared human experience. If you have a joy or a sorrow that you'd like spoken aloud, you may write it in the Joys and Sorrows book, which lives at the back table there by the sanctuary doors. You may submit it through the Google form found on the homepage of our website, or you may email either me or Reverend Susan. There's only a few joys and sorrows that have been shared this morning. Betsy Godwin and Sandy McNabb are happy to have visited their kid Gabriel, who is a freshman at U of I. It was a one-day visit filled with love and smiles and fun. It's a big milestone. And there was a concern shared anonymously that one among us has had some testing done that they're anxious about and are concerned that they're okay. So just holding that person in our hearts and in our love. This is a sacred space for our tender offerings, and it is part of the practice of beloved community. And so I invite you now to come forward to light a candle for a joy or a sorrow that might be on your heart that feels too tender to say aloud. And if you would like either Rob or I to come to you with a basket of candles to light at your seat, please raise your hand and we will do that. Please come forward now. Let us say together, for these joys, we give our thanks. For these sorrows, we give our love. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. This is a prayer written by Reverend Dr. Julia Corbet-Haymeyer. We belong to ourselves. We belong to ourselves. Oh yes, of course, we also belong to families, friends, communities of faith, neighborhoods, the transcendent, and the earth that holds us. But for now, in our post-Roe world, for these few moments, let's focus our awareness on belonging to ourselves. Let this sink in. We belong to ourselves. This is the first belonging, the one that undergirds and grounds all the rest. We decide, in the sovereign mystery of our selfhood, will we stay or will we go? What shall we do? Whom shall we love? What is best for me? Is life, my life, worth the living? Who are we? Who am I? Why am I? And now I invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. Focus on your breathing. Deep and slow. Breathing in, breathing out. Resting in your center. You belong. May we all choose to begin again in love for ourselves, for one another, and for the earth to which we also belong. Amen.
As we say in our covenant each Sunday, service is our law. UCE is called by our mission, values, and principles to contribute to our community, to form accountable partnerships, and to express gratitude through giving. Today's offering will be shared with the American Indian Center of Chicago, whose mission is to promote fellowship among Indian people of all tribes living in metropolitan Chicago, and to create bonds of understanding and communication between Indians and non-Indians in this city. to advance the general welfare of American Indians into the metropolitan community life, to foster the economic advancement of Indian people, to sustain cultural, artistic, and avocational pursuits, and to perpetuate Indian cultural values. If you are joining us from home or in the building, you may text to give, mail in a check, or give from our website. If you write a check, please indicate in the memo line if your check is for the shared offering, pledge, capital campaign, or some other giving. If you are in the sanctuary, the ushers will pass the collection bowls down the rows. Will the ushers please come forward? Please give as generously as you are able, and may what you give bring you joy.
Before our reading, I want to just take a quick liberty to add a joy that I meant to include in the joys and sorrows. Sometimes when I'm the one leading them, I forget to think of them myself. I just want to say a joy about the event that we had this Friday, the art showing in the lobby. You might have noticed as we walked in the work of artist and photographer Joseph Kane, and we had Indigenous educator and activist Starla Thompson join us as well for a really powerful evening. I encourage you to look at those photos in the lobby. And I just want to thank Jonna and Will Van Dyke for introducing us to Joseph and for managing that art program in our lobby. So thank you so much. Our reading this morning is Right to Life, which is abridged by Marge Piercy. A woman is not a basket you place your buns in to keep them warm. Not a brood hen you can slip duck eggs under. Not the purse holding the coins of your descendants till you spend them in wars. Not a bank where your genes collect interest and interesting mutations in the tainted rain, any more than you are. Now you legislate mineral rights in a woman. You lay claim to her pastures for grazing, fields for growing babies like iceberg lettuce. You value children so dearly that none ever go hungry. None weep with no one to tend for them when mothers work. None lack fresh fruit. None chew lead or cough to death, and your orphanages are empty. Every noon, the best restaurants serve poor children steaks. I will choose what enters me, what becomes flesh of my flesh. Without choice, no politics, no ethics lives. I am not your cornfield, not your uranium mine, not your calf for fattening, not your cow for milking. You may not use me as your factory. Priests and legislators do not hold shares in my womb or my mind. This is my body. If I give it to you, I want it back. My life is a non-negotiable demand.
We have cleared off the table, the leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I have told you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can go whoever you will. You can travel any country that your wild heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Some girls grow up to be strong and bold, some boys are quiet and kind. Some race on ahead and some follow behind. We all grow in our own space and time. Some women love women, some men love men. Some raise children and some never do. You can dream all the day, never reach in the end of everything possible for you. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can love whoever you will. You can travel any country where your wild heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose a few special ones, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games. Seek out spirits kind and true. If you give this old world the very best of yourself, it will return the same to you. You can be anybody that you want to be. You can love whoever you will. You can travel any country that your white heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. But the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Will be the love you leave behind when you're done.
I realize this is probably a preaching to the choir statement, but as a Unitarian Universalist, I am emphatically pro-choice. The freedom to choose what happens to our bodies is more than a political position, it is a theological one. Having a choice of what happens to my body is a fundamental issue of human rights, and restricting or prohibiting that choice is against my religion. I am also pro-life, and I proclaim just as vehemently that these are not mutually exclusive positions. Affirming the right to make choices and uphold bodily autonomy is a position that affirms life, and I reject the false dichotomy created by the religious right that I must support one or the other. I didn't always feel this way. There was a time when I was unequivocally pro-life. In this moment, when both life and choice are at stake and at odds, it feels important to share my pro-life to pro-choice journey. My story is not about my direct experience with abortion, as I've never been faced with that decision, but it is nonetheless personal. I've been profoundly impacted by bearing witness to the choices of people whom I love. When I was 16, one of my dearest friends, who was then 15, gave birth to a baby boy. I remember watching her belly grow. The magic of placing my hand there and feeling him move, seeing a small foot with toes that we could count press against her stomach. At the time, I'll admit that in my immaturity, I felt a little envious of the experience she was having. I knew from a very young age that more than anything in the world, I wanted to be a mother, and I longed to know what it felt like to carry a child. My friend was fortunate to have a loving and supportive family. She decided, with that support, to place her child for adoption through an open process which allowed her and the father to choose the family that would raise him. I was there the day she gave birth. I was there the next day when she cried bitterly, thinking she couldn't possibly let him go. I was there when she said goodbye to him at the adoption agency. And though I was there, I still can't truly comprehend the agony she went through in making that choice. As I witnessed the pregnancy, the birth, the choosing, and the letting go, I felt sure that if I was in the same position, I would make the same choice. I had and continue to have the deepest respect and appreciation for my friend for having done what I can only imagine must have been excruciating. As a mother of two, I might now have a better understanding of what she went through, but I realize I will never really know. How could anyone know what it would be like to make that choice unless you had to? That choice was a sacred choice that only she could make. I used to feel, after accompanying my friend, that adoption rather than abortion would be the only moral and compassionate decision to make with an unwanted pregnancy. But I know now that it is cruel and inhumane to force another person to make that choice, to presume everyone would have the ability, the support, and the circumstances to endure it. But it has taken me a long time to get to that realization. After bearing close witness to my friend's experience, I was strongly pro-life until another dear friend made a different choice. Internally, I was supportive outwardly, but internally it was hard for me to reconcile her decision to terminate a pregnancy. I had such certainty that adoption was the only moral choice. But because I know this friend to also be a good and loving person, accompanying her through her difficult and different choice helped me see that hers was also a moral one. Over time, my beliefs have shifted from certainty to agnosticism on the issue of abortion, knowing that I would not have one, but recognizing that others should have the right to now recognizing the sacredness of choice and believing that erasing a person's bodily autonomy is morally abhorrent and the opposite of life-giving. The human right to make choices about our lives and our bodies is a gift, whether you believe that gift comes from God or a human-constructed ethical code. But clearly not all people have had or share the same access to this right. The enslavement of Africans and the forced removal and genocide of indigenous people are legacies of anti-choice, anti-life policies perpetuated today. The colonization of the bodies of Black, Indigenous, and people of color continues through mass incarceration, policing, and criminalization, among other ongoing atrocities. And the forces of patriarchy have always put in place policies and systems to limit the choices of all women. In a blog post titled, "What is a Person?" University of Wisconsin Emeritus Professor of Philosophy John Bailiff writes, "It is because men cannot be sure they are the fathers of the children women bear that men have an interest in controlling the lives of women and have worked to enforce this control." Not all men, just to be clear. The right to choose is woven into the fabric of our life-affirming faith. James Luther Adams, one of the great Unitarian Universalist theologians of the 20th century, wrote famously about the 5 smooth stones of religious liberalism. These are the essential components of a progressive faith. The second smooth stone reads that all relations between persons ought ideally to rest on mutual free consent and not on coercion. And we are not unique among religious people in our position to honor life and the sacredness of choice. Jewish law holds that the fetus is a part of the pregnant person's body, that life does not begin at conception, and that abortion is a form of health care. People across the spectrum of faith support the integrity of choice as an issue of faith. In May, after the Dobbs decision was leaked, I met a group of UCE folks downtown at Daley Plaza for a rally and march to show our solidarity for access to abortions and reproductive care. The person I marched with, a former Catholic, asserted that free will is a sacred gift from God. Who are we? Who is anyone, this person asked, to question the free will of another person? And Methodist pastor David Barnhart expressed poignantly that those who are working to erode access to abortion and reproductive care are proponents of only some lives and for very specific periods of time and locations, the 9 months in utero. He wrote this in his post after the Supreme Court's leaked decision this spring. The unborn are a convenient group of people to advocate for. They never make demands on you. They are morally uncomplicated, unlike the incarcerated, addicted, or the chronically poor. And when they are born, you can forget about them because they cease to be unborn. You can love the unborn and advocate for them without substantially challenging your wealth, power, or privilege, without reimagining social structures, apologizing, or making reparations to anyone. They are, in short, the perfect people to love if you want to claim you love Jesus, but actually dislike people who breathe. Prisoners, immigrants, the sick, the poor, widows, orphans, all the groups that are specifically mentioned in the Bible, they all get thrown under the bus for the unborn. End quote. I had the privilege of hearing a panel of speakers, including Dr. Tony Bond last week at Meadville Lombard Theological School, my alma mater. Dr. Bond is the executive director of the Chicago Abortion Fund and a founding member of Interfaith Voices for Reproductive Justice, along with Reverend Dr. Eddie Journey and Umi Grisby, chief of staff at the Chicago Foundation for Women. Dr. Bond offered many important insights, including this. Acknowledging human dignity requires validating a human ability to decide. She also shared her harrowing personal story of pregnancy and termination without adequate care. And she encouraged others to share their stories if they're able to. There's no stigma or shame in owning your body and the decisions around your health care and your life. We must humanize the range of possibilities for people who are pregnant capable, as she refers to those who are able to carry a fetus. Bodily autonomy, our right to decide what happens inside and to our own bodies, is a right we should all be concerned with protecting for everyone. Protecting this right is connected to the rights of trans people to own and inhabit their own bodies, and the rights of Black people and Indigenous people and people of color to own their bodies, free from control and the colonizing powers of white supremacy, culture, and patriarchy. As Unitarian Universalists, we uphold and affirm the worth and dignity of life. And so we are concerned with the quality of those lives, the resources available to them, the ability for all lives to live with greater and greater freedom from fear and danger of violence or hunger. Beyond the right to choose what happens to our bodies and what should be a right to adequate health care and resources to care for ourselves, each of us should have the right to decide whether we want to have a family. And if we do, we should have the resources and opportunities to empower all the members of our families to thrive. Our choices are already limited by so many factors. You may have heard me say this from this pulpit before, that some scientific research suggests our free will may be entirely mythical, but we lead happier and more fulfilling lives when we believe we have choices and we assert them. Yet in reality, our choices are limited by so many other things: our circumstances, our privileges, identities, our health, and even by our biochemistry. Our choices are limited by maybe to a lesser extent, but by our awareness of their consequences, the impacts on others and the community as a whole. So given that our choices are already limited by so many complex variables, for one dominant group to further restrict the choices, particularly of so many who already experience marginalization and oppression, in my opinion, is a sin against the spirit of life. Abortion is a moral issue. It is an issue of morality to consider all of life, not just the lives of fetuses. It is a moral issue to consider that restricting abortion access, making abortions illegal, unsafe, or inaccessible doesn't save lives. In fact, the opposite is true. Studies show that in states where abortions are restricted or illegal, maternal and infant death rates go up. In places where abortion is legal, there are actually fewer abortions and far fewer deaths from unsafe abortions. As Unitarian Universalists, we are called to be pro-life and pro-choice, to uphold the worth and dignity of living, breathing human beings and the right of those lives to choose what happens to their bodies. As a progressive religious institution, it is our imperative to speak up for reproductive rights and bodily autonomy for all people, regardless of gender, race, geography, health, or economic status. As was mentioned earlier, a few weeks ago, our sister congregation, Second Unitarian of Chicago, spoke up about reproductive justice, putting up a sign showing their unapologetic support of abortion access without exceptions. Soon after, their sign was vandalized and their building damaged by those wanting to silence them. We cannot let that go unanswered. If you're able to go down today at noon, Second Unitarian is holding a rally for reproductive justice, 656 West Berry, if you're able to go. And if not, there are plenty of other ways for you to share your support for life-giving choice. A reproductive justice team is formed here at UC, and you'll be hearing more invitations to support the cause in the coming months. However you are engaged in the struggle to affirm and promote life and choice, we must continue to advocate for and speak as theologically grounded, religiously affiliated, morally upstanding people for the sacred right of all people to choose what happens to their own bodies. Our bodies are a sacred gift, and so are the choices that we make and how we live in them, care for them, and use them for pleasure, for joy, for fulfillment, and maybe for procreation. May we have the courage and the reverence for life to continue to work to preserve and protect that right for all people everywhere. Amen.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in saying the words on the screen by the Reverend Elizabeth Sella Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise in body and or spirit and join in singing hymn number 1014, Answering the Call of Love.
forward boldly, trusting ourselves and trusting each other to make life-giving choices for the well-being of all. Let us go making peace, beloveds.